Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of the Depression Vacation Podcast. Before we get started, I want to just preface with a small trigger warning. If you are a victim of not having consent or sexual assault, please proceed with caution. Thank you very much.
Hi everybody, and welcome to the Depression Vacation Podcast. For, what will this be? This will be a May Day, actually. The first day of May, 2023.
April was a thing.
Yeah. The first of the month is always fun for me because that's when my ranking resets in Hearthstone and I get all the rewards I've earned for the month. Stupid nerd howl.
It's nice to have goals.
Yeah, well, when you're an accomplished Hearthstone player like I am, you reach Legends level every single month.
Yeah, totally.
Although I get absolutely obliterated when I get to Legends level, so I was ranked 4,000 out of like 4,200 players this month.
Nice.
And last month it was like 4,200 out of 4,300 made Legend. So
okay, all right. Well, listen, as long as you weren't the worst, and that's on God right there.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a day. It's raining.
Yeah, it is super gross outside. And I don't know how you've been feeling, Shannon, but this last week, I haven't just been feeling low energy. I feel like my body has been actively breaking down. Like, that's how bad.
Yeah, that's rough.
Part of the problem is about exactly a week ago, I experienced my first major homeowner's repair issue where a pipe burst in my basement, and my basement flooded.
Rip the murder basement.
Yeah, the murder basement is pretty much dead. There's still a little bit on the walls, but I actually used the opportunity of spending all the time down there with water to just like wipe most of it clean. And what happened was I didn't drain my outside hose spigot for winter, which
Hell, that's like homeowner 101. I don't know shit about having a house.
Well, when you get a house, if you have an outdoor spigot, you have to drain it every winter because otherwise the water does stay in those pipes and can freeze and can break over. And sure enough, this happened as soon as I started using my hose to water my plants outside.
This is a Depression Vacation Podcast public service announcement.
Mm-hmm.
Empty your spigots.
Empty your spigots. God, that sounds like code for masturbate more often. But
both of those things, do those.
Empty your spigots, empty them good. Do at least once a day, or twice, or 3, or 4, or 7.
I don't know. I feel like it's a good mantra. You can apply that to like a whole bunch of different things in life.
Yeah, actually, you really can. You can, get out all of your feelings with your friends, or if you've got bad stuff going on, just be like, talk it out, empty your spigot.
Yeah.
Well, we can put that on a t-shirt now.
I was just thinking that. It's like excellent t-shirt idea.
Right next to well-adjusted people don't do comedy. We keep talking about making these t-shirts, and we never fucking do it.
We will, eventually. If you're interested in Depression Vacation Podcast merch, I have a Canva account, and I'm not afraid to use it.
Yeah.
And my friend has a Canva premium account, and I'm not afraid to use it.
Ooh, wow. Can we be friends? Wait, we're already friends. Never mind how. Yeah. Stop trying to upsell.
I think she even has like a Cricut. I thought about getting a Cricut, but I specifically asked for a sewing machine for Christmas like 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. I've used it once because I said I was going to make my own cosplay and like my own costumes and completely.
That would have been fun.
Yeah, I know, but I don't have room to do projects like that.
It is like my mom actually is very proficient at doing costumes, and she has done a bunch of really good ones for my sister Christy. It is incredibly time consuming. There have been the last one she made for Christy was the protagonist from Zero Dawn Horizon, which was fantastic. Like the way that she made it's a pretty intricate costume too, and it involved Christy coming up like several weekends to like get measurements to work with her, and my mom like really put herself out for it. So you
nice.
Can make amazing stuff. It's just a ton of work.
Oh yeah. Well, what happened was I was going to this gala, and I needed a last minute dress. So I ran to, where was I, like Macy's or something, and thank goodness it was around this time of year, so I got like a prom dress, but the thing was it didn't zip up all the way, and so what I did was I took it home, I took out half the zipper, and I put in a corset back.
Ooh.
And it wasn't pretty, but it got the job done.
I'm surprised that wasn't prettier, actually, than...
I mean, it was pretty enough. Like I was showing people at the gala, and they were like, you did that yourself? And I was like, yes, I did. And they were like, oh my God, that looks so good.
Very cool. You went to prom. Isn't that cool?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Did you go to your prom in high school?
I did. I went to both proms. My junior year, I had a boyfriend, which is weird to say because, like, when you're 16, 17, it feels like as an adult, it feels weird to be like, I had a boyfriend. It's like, no, you didn't. You had somebody who held hands.
Yeah, somebody who liked you and somebody who gave you a kiss.
Actually, no, he did take my virginity. So, I mean.
Oh, okay.
I mean, but
you were
also,
the one who said holding hands.
Yeah, I know. I know what I said, but I was lying. Anyway, so see, here's the thing. I never got asked to a dance in high school.
You were always the one asking for prom, or you had a boyfriend? So
the 1 year I did. The 1 year I had a boyfriend, and I was waiting for him to ask me to prom, and it came up like around friends, and he was like, "Oh yeah, are we going to that?" And I was like, "I'll take it." And then my senior year,
so romantic.
I know. My senior year, I actually asked out this guy that I had a crush on, and immediately, like, it was a kind of a public prom-posal. Like, it was like a round of our friends, and everyone knew what was happening, and then he, like, didn't answer in front of everyone, and he was just, like, silent, and I was like, cool, that's not going to be traumatizing. And then a little later, I, like, backtracked, and I was like, oh, well, I just mean that we're, like, best friends, and we're going to go anyway, so we might as well match and take the pictures to make our parents happy.
Aww.
And he was like, okay, yeah, we'll go. And then, like, the day of, he was like, actually, I have a crush on you, too. And I was like, well, then what the fuck, dude? So neither one of my proms, both of my proms I orchestrated, so, and that's pretty much on brand for me.
Yeah. Well, I love that you, because, like, typical convention is men ask the women out. So I love that you, like, I don't know if this is still something that happens in high schools or if it's, like, most people have grown out of it. But I love that you were confident enough and, like, knew what you wanted enough to do that.
Well, I tried to be. Now, one time I did ask, it was my sophomore year, I asked the guy I had a crush on, but I asked him too late to go to homecoming. I asked him like 4 days before or something. And he was like, oh, you should have asked me earlier. I already have a date. And I think about that conversation to this day. Because I'm like, what do you mean I should have asked you earlier? Do you mean you would have gone with me?
Aww.
And the one that got away,
Yeah, if he's listening to this podcast, he got away.
Did you ever do a prom-posal?
No, so prom-posals did not exist at all when I was there, and I did not go to either of the proms, junior or senior.
Okay.
You actually could have gone to prom 4 times, technically.
Yeah,
it's just
that was
only
the same way
juniors
for
and
us.
seniors were allowed to invite people, but my Catholic high school also had, I don't know if this was a rule for you, and I don't think it was a rule that was standard with a lot of proms based on what I've seen in movies and what I've heard from other people. You had to have a date to go to prom. If you did not have a date, you were not allowed to go.
Not for the juniors and seniors. For us, anybody could go.
See, that's why I was not able to go to prom, was I could not get a date for it. Like, I didn't even try junior year. And then, like, senior year, I tried kind of, like, half-assedly the week of. And there were, like, 1 or 2 girls in, like, my sister's class that I sort of reached out to, and they said they weren't really interested in going to prom, which meant they probably were not interested in going to prom with me. But
we don't need to read into it. That's not what they said.
That's also that is very true.
Exactly.
See,
you're putting extra fluff in there.
I am
that doesn't
totally
even exist.
putting extra fluff in there. So I apologize to the unnamed
Changing lives.
women that I just referred to.
Shannon, at it again with those good vibes.
That is good vibes, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't go to either. I did go to my senior winter formal, and I had a date for that. But it was like, I don't know. It felt very like the concept of not being able to go to like a big high school event unless you had a date felt like a very gatekeepery type of move.
It is, yeah. That makes me feel icky.
But they're kind of fucked up. Like, my high school was Bishop McDevitt High School, and it's still, they were in the news about 10 years ago, like national news for their prom, because there was a girl there, I think she identified as female, at least that's how they read it at the time, wanted to wear a suit to the prom, and they would not let her in whatsoever. And actually, this just happened in Nashville
I heard about
again.
that.
Ooh, sorry. But yeah, this woman made national news because McDevitt would not let her to the prom because she was wearing a suit. And actually, the Always Sunny in Philadelphia guys caught wind of it and let her be on an episode as a result of like what happened there, which I thought was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Now, like, it's so crazy because it is prom season. For those of you who know a high schooler that might be getting ready for prom. And I was looking at pictures on Facebook of like, because I have friends that are parents, and I wasn't like stalking high schools. I was like looking up on, friends. Anyway, so I'm like looking at all these pictures, and like the expression that you see at high school proms now, it's like the fucking Met, dude. Is crazy. The kind of outfits they are doing.
Well, they send like photographers from Penn Live and all that too. So it's like the Met for younger kids.
Yeah.
I'm not how do you feel about prom-posals? Because that's something we were talking about. Like,
I always wanted one.
Aww.
I always did. So I've always been a huge romantic. I have always, like growing up, I always like imagined that it was the most romantic thing in the world for, someone to make big, grand romantic gestures.
Yeah. I, at one point, thought that was the way to do things, too. So,
but I never got one, so then I got kind of disenfranchised about it. And the closest thing I've gotten now is my actual proposal. And
I was going to ask, did Ryan do a big proposal for you?
It wasn't, like, big. It was, like, just the right amount for the two of us. He took me back to where we had our first date. It was this nature. It was so funny, though, because he was
romantic. I love that.
Yeah, but he was like, hey, you remember that nature walk we went on in our first date? Do you want to go back there? I was like, yes, our first date location that we haven't been back to in like 3 years. You want to go for no discernible reason. That's not suspicious whatsoever.
The cadence that you had with saying that was exactly Ryan's cadence. So I could actually hear his voice in my head.
He's like, oh my gosh, like, let's go to the nature walk. And I was like, we haven't been there in 3 years. He was like, yeah, that's why we should go. Because it's been so long.
Aww.
But yeah, it was but we get there and he takes me on this little, like, it's a nature walk. It's in Hummelstown. And it's literally just kind of like this loop in the woods.
Oh, I know exactly where that is.
Yeah, the Suez or whatever it is.
Yeah, we, like in high school, we actually used to go up to the train tracks and throw rocks at the trains as they went by.
So, when you walk that loop, there's a couple of, like, parts where you can go down right by the river. Or, yeah, that's the Yellow Breeches, I guess.
Yeah. Did he take you to Haas's afterwards?
No, he did not. We went to Shogun.
Oh, Shogun is my favorite all-around Japanese restaurant.
I made him go because I was like, I feel weird that like we're engaged and we're just going to go home now. Like we have to go out, like we have to have a nice dinner or something. So I made us drive home, change into nicer clothes, and then go to dinner at Shogun because I wasn't wearing nice enough clothes to go to my newly engaged dinner. Not that anybody other than me and Ryan were going. So
my family, like Kathy is the only one of my family who's been engaged and married. And when Steve finally proposed to her, we all went out to dinner at Gabriella's that night. Just a little bit down the road from Shogun.
Well, Ryan didn't plan super well because his parents were out of town. Like they were in New Jersey and they were like driving back when we got engaged. Actually, no, they wouldn't be back till the next day. And then like my dad is my dad and has plans usually, so we just kind of FaceTimed him and we were like, hey, what's up, we're engaged.
Aww.
So anyway, we get to one of these little offshoots down to the river and I get down there and there's these roses and little tea lights in a heart shape. Now a little backstory here. Let's so that was Sunday. Let's look at Saturday, right? So I had no plans to spend the night at his parents' house that night. But then my toilet stopped working. So I called Ryan. I was like, hey, I don't have a toilet. I'm going to come over and spend the night at your house. And it was just him and his sister at his parents' house. And I get there unknowing that the next day he had this proposal planned. Because we were supposed to meet at the nature hike at there. Like we were supposed to drive separately. And now I'm in the house. And he has to find a way to get away to set up the flowers and the tea lights and all that stuff. And he's like low-key freaking out because now all of a sudden here I am.
Oh, no.
And but it turns out that I had book club that day. So I was supposed to go to the hike right after book club. So I go to the book club and Ryan like books it to the nature walk and sets this up while I'm at book club. And I get there and I had like a suspicion that I was going to be proposed to. But he was so calm. Like, I was like, there's no way. Like, he's too calm. There's no way this is happening today. He's just, there's no way.
Would you have been surprised if this was all just so he would ask you to prom?
Wouldn't be like, we're 25 and 26. I don't understand why we're doing this.
It's like, that doesn't mean we can't go to prom. Actually, Ryan, yes, it does mean we can't go to prom.
Exactly. Anyway, so, we get there and he does the proposal, which is very, very sweet. And then I we kiss, we hug, all that stuff. And then I'm like looking around. I was like, oh my gosh, we're engaged. What do we do now? And he was like, I guess we clean all this shit up. So like both of us are like going around cleaning up our own little proposal site. I thought it was hilarious.
That's very sweet. Hey, this is an opportunity for listener engagement. If you're married, what was your proposal like? And how did your significant other, or if you were the proposee, like what did you do? Because I'm interested in this because the culture for proposals, I almost said propositions, but probably about the same thing.
I have a proposition for you. Would you like to be stuck with me forever?
Sure, why not? Oy lass. Yeah, but it used to be like, because I also was a romantic at one point too, and like lots of people were kind of like, oh yeah, you got to make it into a big proposal. But now the more I talk with people, like specifically Lauren and I have had this talk a bunch of times, because she like it's if I ever did propose to her, I would not make it a big thing whatsoever. But because I feel like it puts a lot of pressure on whoever the person being proposed to is, as to whether or not they're going to accept. And you want them to have like just all of the, ability to, or even, you could even say, you could tell me at a later date, I think would be, also a good idea. But
be like, this is my intention. I'd like to marry you. Get back to me within 3 to 5 business days.
Yes. Or if it's a weekend. Well, business days, yeah.
See, I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you know your shit.
I'm a business lady.
But I feel like what Ryan did is a perfect mix of the two, because it's not like he invited all of your friends and family to pop out of the yellow breeches at the time that he... Yeah. This is a baptism and a proposal at the same time. It was
so funny because when he set it up and went to meet me in the parking lot, there was nobody around. And then we go to walk to the little place where he has it set up. And we walk by this old ass man just fishing in the river. He's like on the landing beside us. And so like we have our little engagement moment when I'm walking by and I'm like, I'm engaged. And I like looked at the guy. I was like, were you in on this? And he was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
He was going to catch the fish that had the ring in it initially, that they had already put in there. But then the fish decided to book it to Mexico and freedom. So this is the second ring. Mm-hmm. Well, that's really cute. I love that. It feels like a very Ryan type of proposal. Mm-hmm. He's very sweet, very into it, and like smart enough to realize that like doing it in a public place would put a lot of pressure on you and stuff like that. Like that's why I would never like. For anybody, I would never do like a huge public proposal. Also, I'd be humiliated when they said no. So
yeah, it was so funny though because like up until I got there, I was convinced that we weren't getting engaged and we were literally just going on a walk. Mm-hmm. But I get there and he's wearing his like my favorite of his like casual shirts, and I was like, this motherfucker is going to propose. And I had like shown up with a coffee. And like when he proposed, I'm like, I really wish I wasn't holding Starbucks right now. I was like, I didn't know what to do. I was like, do I put the drink down first? Do I say yes first? Do I cry first? I don't know.
The funny thing with Ryan, too, that I've noticed as a sort of side tangent, Ryan, there are so many people in movies and TV that remind me of Ryan, like all the time. Like last night, because this has been like a super depressive week, I've just been going through and watching like old dumb comedies from like 20 years ago, and Eurotrip came up. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie.
I haven't.
Basically, everybody who's a lead in Eurotrip, with the exception of Michelle Trachtenberg, for Hal's first crush, and when he was 10 years old, were not stars whatsoever and really didn't do anything afterwards. And the guy who plays Michelle Trachtenberg's twin brother in the movie reminded me so much of Ryan, not just like facially a little bit, but also just the way he stood, the way he talked, his earnestness, his like sweet puppy dog eyes. I was like, he reminds me so much of Ryan. And then Bill Hader on Barry reminds me of Ryan for exactly opposite reasons. It's
so funny because a lot of people say he looks like Bill Hader and he doesn't see it whatsoever.
I didn't used to see it, and then somebody mentioned that before there too. But and then now whenever I watch an episode of Barry, I see old disgruntled Ryan with a beard, dead eyes, and in prison. Because Barry's in prison right now. But something else I did want to mention, too, because I was talking with Lauren about this last night. I know that we talked about romantic comedies with Wallace like a while ago, but like I was going through all of like I said, the dumb romantic comedies we used to watch a lot because I needed to pick me up, and I landed on Never Been Kissed.
I've never seen it.
Oh, do you know what the plot of Never Been Kissed is?
I'm going to make a guess
All right.
about someone who has never been kissed, but like for a long time.
Did
like
you look this up on IMDb beforehand or Wikipedia?
It was like a 40-year-old virgin kind of situation.
It actually is kind of like what it is. Drew Barrymore is a 25-year-old, like recovering, like she was the most unpopular girl in high school.
Okay. First of all, public service announcement. If you are 25 years old and listening to this podcast, go kiss a person.
Yeah,
I volunteer. Just come here, I'll kiss you, and then it'll be over.
I'll kiss you too. Kisses
and then you'll have 2 kisses, and then you'll be like ahead of the game.
Yeah, you'll be strutting out of there like Shannon was strutting out of the woods after she got engaged. I just got kissed. Mm-hmm. But this, so Never Been Kissed gets a lot worse. So Drew Barrymore is an investigative reporter. After her high school days were like the worst days of her life, where another like sad thing to it too is the most popular girl, because we were talking about prom, most popular guy in school actually asked her to her prom when she was like a senior, and clearly like light years ahead of her in the social hierarchy, and he did it just to humiliate her. And they just, as the limo drove by to pick her up, him and his super hot date just threw eggs at her and called her Josie Grossi because her name was Josie. So she's like scarred from high school.
As you would be, yeah.
And the editor of her paper sends her on a undercover assignment to go into high school and find out what high school people are like now. So she poses as a student, as a 25-year-old, falls in love with a teacher, which is very problematic as a student. But like the supposed like, oh, if only he knew thing is that she's actually like 25, but still like plays tons of mind games with this guy essentially, who feels like he's falling in love with a student and then feels really terrible about it because it's a shit thing to do. And then when he finds out that she's like actually like a 25-year-old reporter, like responds as you might think. And even worse, because Drew Barrymore is not popular and the investigative piece is not going well, her brother, played by David Arquette, decides to also pose as a high school student, in which he dates a high schooler, goes short of actually having sex with her because his girlfriend does propose that at one point, and David Arquette's like, uh-oh, I'm like 27, I can't do this. But also joins the baseball team and takes them to the state championship as a 27-year-old playing with 17-year-olds.
All right, I have questions.
Please.
Number one, what fucking newspaper?
The Chicago Sun-Times.
No fucking way.
They didn't even make up a newspaper. They just chose one of the most prominent publications in the country.
Like, you don't need to, this is unnecessary. First of all, who gives a shit about high schoolers? Nobody gives a shit about high schoolers. High schoolers barely give a shit about high schoolers. I mean, there's no need for us to know what they're like. We know what high schools are like. We've all been there.
This is the thought that was going through my head while I was watching the movie, because the paper devotes a significant number of resources to this story. Like at one point, they don't trust her to write the story, so they just install a pocket camera on her and hire an entire van and producer to record every single thing she does. And then her editor is going to review the tapes and write the story. And I'm like, this is a lot of resources for something that might appear in the paper once.
Well, and on top of that, if you have that many resources, why aren't you putting it towards things like, I don't know, shadow government shit? I don't know. Like it's first of all, entirely unnecessary, this whole scenario.
Yes, that is a very good way to describe the plot of Never Been Kissed. It was very unnecessary.
And number two, as an employee, who's being like, yes, this makes sense. This is absolutely something that's within my job description. Going to high school and pretending to be a kid again.
It's so funny because nobody, maybe because the movie has just passed, but we rented this movie a ton when I guess I was a freshman in high school, and like my sisters were 2 and 4 years behind me, because they loved specifically Drew Barrymore, and I love Drew Barrymore too. And this was
She's
just
well
one of
loved. She's a beloved human being. I love her.
It was one of like 100 like nonchalant sort of movies that she put out in succession around that time. And I never thought of this movie again. And I was even telling Lauren last night, I was like, yeah, this is a pretty fucked up movie. And she's like, you think? Yeah.
So at what point in the film does Drew Barrymore get hot? Because what I'm hearing is that like she wasn't popular in high school, and then she became a grown-up, and now she's back in high school.
Well, so this is maybe one of the more interesting parts of the movie. And there's a lot of interesting parts, for better or for worse. So when she's sent on the high school assignment, she sort of just reverts to her. And there's a really nice group of people who are the denominators, the sort of mathy, geeky students, led by Lily Sobieski in her first role. Another thing about this movie, it is jam-packed with ridiculous background or small role talent. Like Jessica Alba is hot girl number 2 in The Click, and Marley Shelton is hot girl number 3. Molly Shannon's in it, John C. Reilly. So much like high-level A-list talent for small roles. And so getting back to Lily Sobieski, they basically, because Drew Barrymore is still a geek and doesn't know how to blend in with popular kids, she invites her to just be their friend and hang out with them. And she's having a great time until her editor realizes that the story isn't like with the geeks, that she has to go with the popular kids. And she gets hot the second her brother realizes that she's in trouble and infiltrates the high school to infiltrate the cool kids because he's a cool guy, and then build her up so they think that she's cool because he thinks that it's all about perception. And if a cool person perceives her as being cool, that they will perceive her as being cool. And for the sake of the movie, he's right. She becomes prom queen, too.
Well, of course she does. But what... And you've brought up a whole other problem. What skin does David Arquette have in the game?
He loves his sister. And also he, like at 27 years old, he's clearly the kind of person who peaked in high school. He works for a Hawaiian version of UPS called the Tiki Shack, which is a delivery service. And more than anything, he mentions in the movie too that he would have been like a college baseball player, but he got hurt his senior year. So it's about him trying to relive his like glory and also maybe go to college at 27 for baseball. I don't know. He didn't think this out.
I don't know a lot about Tiki UPS, but let me tell you, I have a pretty solid understanding of what I believe their time off requirements are. So this man
good point.
is taking off time from his full-time job, or at least part-time job, to go help out his sister with her full-time, more prestigious job for no compensation whatsoever.
No, he's doing it for love of the game, and the game is high school.
Listen, I have a brother. I haven't spoken to my brother since like Christmas, okay?
Aww.
I don't think my brother would be doing any kind of thing like that.
No. Well, I mean, your brother shouldn't do that, by the way, because
right.
What David Arquette did with, like, another thing that came to mind as I was watching this movie, too, are you familiar with the, this happened like maybe 7 years ago, but are you familiar with the Harrisburg High School student who posed as a high schooler and he was really like 27? Because this actually happened in real life.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
And a couple of my friends taught this kid, like a guy I used to do improv with, used to be a math teacher at John Harris High School, and actually taught him and said that he was like one of the, like before they found out that he was actually like a creepy 27-year-old or whatever, that he was one of the students that the teachers hoped for because you could tell that like he'd got things, he was very smart, and they hoped that he was going to be like a shining beacon student to go off to college and be like, the system works or can work. So that's what this whole thing reminded me of.
Well, yeah. I mean, not to mention, I mean, obviously this isn't the only film that has kind of like this premise of like going back to high school. So like 21 Jump Street.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but I've seen trailers and clips and things. And so that's the same.
21 Jump Street was a fun movie, though. Although I might not feel the same way now after dissecting Never Been Kissed. But
right. Now go back and watch 21 Jump Street.
Yeah.
Then there's another one that kind of has this premise, like with Zac Efron, 17 again, but that's just the whole thing of like Matthew Perry is an old man who somehow gets to be young again, and apparently the young version of Matthew Perry is Zac Efron. Make it make sense.
Oh, so it's reverse Big.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Yeah, that's a little bit different, I suppose, because like if you are Zac Efron aged, you have to go to school, so. Right,
like that's kind of a logistics issue. I don't know if he ever has like a romantic relationship with a younger person though, because that definitely would be problematic if you have the mind of a 40-year-old man.
Yeah, well, so did you ever, this is another odd movie that we could talk about here. Did you ever see the movie Jack?
Mm-hmm.
Which is like oddly one of Francis Ford Coppola's last films. I have no fucking idea why he decided to direct that movie after Apocalypse Now and The Godfather. But that's I watched it again a couple of years ago because it's on Disney Plus now, and it's a better movie than I remembered. And that is something that they deal with a lot. Like they really like. To his credit, because Francis Ford Coppola is a good filmmaker, they really go into like the psychology and also the emotional aspect of what it would be like to be a 10-year-old who looks like he's 40 going to school. And I think the saddest part is when he asks out Jennifer Lopez, his teacher, to go to the school dance because she's the only person that like matches with him physically, and she's telling him that like, no, you're a 10-year-old boy. Like, I understand where this is coming from, but this is not going to happen for these reasons. And that made me feel profound. I mean, I don't think anybody with that disease would look like Robin Williams particularly, because from what I've heard, the rare people who do have that syndrome, that's not quite the way it works. But yeah, it made me. I don't know where I was going with this, but.
A movie that Ryan talks about sometimes, because we get into like these ethics of movies and that kind of thing. I guess it was on. I've never seen it, but I guess it was on Disney Channel or some sort of original movie somewhere. And it's called The Blank Check.
Oh, Blank Check. Oh, I know.
Yeah. So apparently, there's a grown woman that kisses a little boy on the mouth.
Yes. Oh my God, I forgot about that. I watched Blank Check again for the first time since a kid, like when the pandemic first hit. But yeah, it was sort of like, this was, again, a movie of my generation when I was the age set that Blank Check was looking for. And it was definitely like supposed to be a Home Alone alternative. And they even throw in like a 10-minute Home Alone sequence at the end where the bad guys infiltrate the kid's house and he uses all of his toys he bought with his $1 million to eradicate them. So
Sure, as you do.
Yeah. Do you know what the plot of Blank Check is?
He explained it. You'll probably explain it better than I do.
Oh, I'll keep it briefer than usual. But basically, there's this like criminal who gets out of jail. He stashed away $1 million like before he went to prison, and uses his accomplice who runs a bank to swap them out for untraceable bills. So for like a day, he has $1 million in an like unknown bank account at the bank. And then as he's leaving the bank, accidentally hits this kid with his car, ruins his bike. But the police are coming for an unrelated issue. So he panics and just gives him a blank check to fix his bike. And the kid, as a lark, writes $1 million on it because he doesn't think he's ever going to get it. And sure enough, he takes it to the bank, and his business associate thinks the kid is like a mule for the money. So he gives him the $1 million, and then he ends up doing what a 10-year-old would do with $1 million, including taking a incredibly beautiful 28-year-old undercover cop on a date where she does indeed kiss him on the mouth. So
why?
I don't know. These are the things you just didn't ask when you were a kid. So
we should ask those things. We should teach our kids to ask those things.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because there is a huge like double standard of perception in that case too. And this was a huge argument. Like a girlfriend I had like 3 girlfriends ago got into with my dad one time because my dad was, I forget exactly why my dad brought this up, but he was bringing up about how like a 28-year-old woman sleeping with a 15-year-old isn't quite the same thing. It's what we all wanted when we were in school. And
right.
All of us were like, Dad, you're still talking about a grown person sleeping with a child in this case. Just because the genders are reversed and because you perceive the kid really wanted it, like whether or not that's true, it's still statutory rape. So
right, and we're getting into this concept of like consent too, because, for example, like just a couple of years ago, Katy Perry got in hot water because there was this contestant on American Idol who said that he hadn't had his first kiss. He wanted to save his first kiss for marriage, and Katy was like, oh, well, I don't remember the exact context of it, but she was like, oh, can you come give me a kiss on the cheek? Like, kiss on the cheek. And he comes to kiss her on her cheek because she's a famous woman, and, she told him to.
Yeah.
At the last second, she turns her head and kisses her on the mouth. And then a lot of people were saying, like, oh, well, his first kiss got to be with Katy Perry. And it's like...
But he stated he didn't want that. So.
Right, and I think he was like 18 or 19 or something like that. So it was like a whole like issue of like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Consent would be maybe the right word.
Well, yeah, consent too, but also like imbalance of power. That's what I'm thinking of.
Oh, okay.
So there was that. And then there was another one where please don't come at me if I get this wrong, but... I think it was, and I love her so much, so it's going to kill me.
Can't wait to come at you now when you say
but
this wrong.
I think it was for Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, I just watched that again last night.
Wait, no, maybe this isn't the one I'm thinking of. But I feel like it was Margot Robbie. But there was a situation where the actress, probably Margot Robbie, decided to kiss her very famous male co-star.
Okay.
It wasn't in the script.
Okay.
And she just went for it. And, and because her thought process was like, well, worst comes to worst, I've kissed this. I think, in this context, it would have been Leonardo DiCaprio, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't.
Margot Robbie was probably too old for him at that point.
Yeah, true. But the whole thing was like, so she's like, of course, it's Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm going to kiss him because, like, how else will you get this opportunity? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people were saying, like, well, if a male actor of, like, the same amount of fame of Margot Robbie, let's say, I don't know, guess Tom Holland, I guess. I don't know. Maybe Tom Holland decides to kiss... who's more famous than Tom Holland and a woman? Anne Hathaway. I don't.
Tom, this feels like a Mad Lib all of a sudden. AI generated situation.
Yeah, I know. I'm doing great at this. And then so if Tom Holland was like, I just went to kiss Anne Hathaway because who wouldn't? It's Anne Hathaway. Like that, there would be a whole different conversation there.
Well, this actually happened. This wasn't a movie set particularly, but at the Academy Awards in 2003, this happened with Adrian Brody, and he got in a lot of trouble for it. Like, do you remember he Halle Berry was presenting the award to him, and when he won, he full out kissed her, with the dip and everything, and she was definitely not into it. And this was 2003, so the conversations about consent were kind of non-existent at that point. But even back then, so many people were really pissed at him, and he almost got banned from the Oscar. I know he's banned from Saturday Night Live for something else, but he was almost banned from the Oscars as a result of doing that. And I think he apologized, but it was yeah, it was quite a big thing. So yeah, if you want to kiss somebody, it has thinking about movies too. I haven't had a ton of movies where we've actually had kisses in them. And there's never really been any sexual content in any movies I've done too. But all of the kisses that we've always talked them out and felt them out. In fact, one movie I shot right before I moved to California. There was not a kiss in the script, and the main actor, who was a friend of mine and an old roommate, felt like there was a lot of romantic tension that was going unsaid, basically in a particular scene, and so he talked it out with the actress, who was game, and then they did have a weird, sort of funny kiss, but also a cinematic kiss at the same time, and I feel like those are good conversations in that case. Don't just kiss somebody in the heat of the moment in a script,
right. And I think there's a way to have that conversation. So like you said, in that context, the actor said, hey, I think this is something that our characters would do. Mm-hmm. I think there's a way to have that conversation without making the other person feel pressured to say yes. Rather than saying I think our characters would kiss. Mm-hmm. Going to the other person and saying, I want to make sure that you're comfortable with this. This is what I'm feeling for the characters, and I want you to know that it's okay for you to say no, and we'll move forward, but I just wanted to run this idea by you.
He may have done that. It's been 12 years since we shot this movie at this point, so I don't remember the exact particulars, but he very well may have just they may have discussed it beforehand.
No, I'm sure that was probably the case. I'm just saying that in just advice for anyone out there, if you're thinking about consent, and because I had a lot of arguments with people in college about consent, because that was when the Me Too movement was in its height. And there was a kid in one of my classes who I despised. His name was Laszlo, and I'm not afraid to tell it. If you know a Laszlo, it was probably that guy.
Laszlo Panaflex.
I don't know what his last name was because I didn't care. I got a C in that class. In a class, I don't think it was that, because he was in several classes I had in college. And I had a C in the one class because I just refused to go because he was in that class. I only showed up for tests. Okay. And that's how I got a C in Intro to Criminology.
See, that's horrible. When you have somebody who makes you feel that uncomfortable that you actively try to avoid them that much, that's really bad.
Right. So we're all talking about consent in a room. And in this particular, it wasn't the same class that I refused to go to. This was a 400 level class. Mm-hmm. The one that I refused to go to was an intro level class. So I, had no problem getting a C in that. So we're in this class, and a couple of problematic things happen. Ooh. Imagine a class of 8 people.
Oh, so there were this is a small class.
400 level night class. There there were 2 men in this class, Laszlo and one other dude, and then 6 women. Okay?
At least you outnumbered him? I don't know.
But I'm just going to tell you 2 things that he said, and you're going to hate him.
Yeah,
okay?
well, I already hate him because he made you uncomfortable, but I'll hate him even more now.
So, well, in this particular class, he had said something to the effect of, like, women can't be in special ops. He was like, men and women are physically different. There's no way that women could do the same thing that men do to the level of special ops. And I looked this man in the face and I was like, Laszlo, you couldn't do special ops. That doesn't mean women can't do special ops. So that was like the first one that really got me. But then also imagine for the intro to criminology class, we all got to attend a talk, like a seminar. Mm-hmm. And it was not just the intro to criminology class. It was like the entire criminology like classes that were in session at the time. It was like a joint talk. Okay. So I'm sitting there and I almost didn't go because I was like, fuck it, I don't care. But he was there and he was a couple rows behind me. And the whole thing was about consent. It was about rape and all this stuff.
Man, I can't wait to hear what Laszlo had to say about consent.
So he raises his hand and he goes, I just think that consent really is, it's hard. And I think that it really ruins the mood if you have to say like, is this good and is this okay and all that stuff. Like you can't have those conversations. And I was like, Laszlo, first of all I've heard in that sentence is that you have no game. And I said that out loud.
Good.
In an auditorium full of about 50 or 60 people.
You shut that Laszlo down. Shut it good.
I was like, Laszlo, if you can't figure out, and I said this out loud, if you can't figure out how to ask me if you can move forward while not destroying the mood, you don't deserve to have sex.
Yeah.
You've lost your sex privileges.
I have a lot to say about this because like this is exactly how I was raised, was Laszlo's point of view in that particular situation. And it was also reinforced by tons of TV shows and movies and things that weren't real, but your perception of reality is sometimes off depending on where you're at. But like we never had conversations at all about what consent means in sexual activity. Like be that in Catholic school, no shit in Catholic school, or at home. And these were the sort of things that like my dad would say all the time. Like, the unsexiest thing in the world is asking permission, Hal, that kind of thing. He didn't say exactly in that particular sense, but I remember this came up because, there was a Notre Dame football player who that's my dad's worship. Like he loves Notre Dame football, like a church. And when he was drafted, what had happened was like his senior year at Notre Dame, he had like groped a girl in a private setting, sexually assaulted her, and she killed herself afterwards. And this was something that everybody was talking about because he was like maybe going to be a mid-round pick, and he fell a lot lower. And my dad, being a staunch defender of everyone at Notre Dame, was saying, oh, she shouldn't have killed herself over that. And this was the discourse. And I remember I was having conversations with my friend Steve Okawa specifically about this. And he was trying to tell me, like 24-year-old Hal at the time, he was like, no, that's not cool. Like you have no idea how like any sort of sexual assault is going to mess with a person emotionally. Like he was definitely in the wrong. You can't, as an independent person and also a man, like just be like, oh, that wasn't that bad. She should get over it. Mm-hmm. Like it's up to her. And obviously it really, really affected her because in Steve's words, he was like, nobody commits suicide just to make somebody feel bad. So
exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, these are like the Laszlo conversation is interesting because these are ideas that were reinforced in my upbringing. Also because like a lot of the men involved just also never had these conversations either. And so their bad behavior is more like institutionalized over generations. And that's why I think it's important to talk about it these days and be open and be like, yeah, I was taught that consent wasn't really a thing. So
yeah, I get real hype about like consent and that kind of thing. And especially when people talk about like when you're in a relationship or, married or what have you, and they're saying like, I once had, and I talked about this a little bit before, but with my one ex-boyfriend, one of the reasons why we quick trigger warning if you have ever been assaulted or anything like that.
Yeah, we should have had trigger warnings for other. I think I'll probably edit in something.
Yeah. So I had an ex-boyfriend, and I feel like I might have mentioned this before, but he had started touching me in my sleep and doing sexual acts with me while I was unconscious and asleep.
Good fucking God. I think you've told me this before.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast or not, but when I called him out on it and I told him, I was like, this is not acceptable, he had said that, like, by us being in a relationship, that was, like, implied consent, that he could do whatever he wanted with my body.
No. I assume this person was dumped pretty soon after saying that? Or?
Not soon enough.
Yeah.
And that was but that's one of those things. It's a complicated situation when you're in one of those types of relationships. You know, you make excuses for the other person that you're with and say that, you know, it's not that bad, or like, oh, maybe he's right, that, like, I unintentionally gave him permission to do this, or
it's weird what love will do to your perception of a person. So
right.
Assuming it was love. I'm not sure it was.
Well, I mean, it was at the time, you know, or we thought it was at the time.
Yeah.
You know?
There was, like, as a lesser conversation note to this, actually, like, Karen was staying at my house this last week because she had, like, a conference she was going to, which worked out well because I was dog sitting for my parents, so my house was empty. And we were hanging out after the mic on Thursday, and, like, there's an ex-girlfriend of mine that Karen was not a fan of whatsoever, like, very, very vehemently. And I still don't feel any ill will towards this particular person, even though they treated me probably the worst of any girlfriend I've had. And, like, Karen was, like, my sort of shoulder to talk on in a lot of those situations. And so she constantly will remind me of, like, all the horrible things this person did to me while we were together. And I'm kind of like, you know, I really loved this person. It doesn't, like, register with me the things that they did. And I actually don't bear any, it's weird because I bear more ill will towards other relationships that ended where I wasn't treated as poorly. So, like, your perception of people's behaviors in a relationship, I think, are sometimes altered.
Yeah,
or,
absolutely.
Like, also because you just, like, depending on how much you care for a person, you just want to make it work. Or in my particular case, I think with this person, I understand where a lot of her worst behaviors came from and how they were adopted. And, like,
but let us not forget, your trauma does not excuse your actions.
Yeah, that's true. Well, an interesting thing that's come up with Lauren a bunch of times is this particular ex, I was not allowed to express, like, trauma or anything like that because she had it worse a lot with her life, and she would bring that up all the time. And I know, like, deep down inside that, like,
it's not a competition.
It's not a competition at all. But I have been sort of more conditioned not to, like, if I know Lauren is having a really hard day and I'm also having a lesser hard day, I just won't mention it a lot of the time. And she's always like, Hal, it's not a competition. Both of us can be having a bad day and support each other. And I'm like, man, I love you so much for that. Thank you.
Aww. I mean, yeah, that was something that, like, our premarital counselor was talking about in terms of, like, trying to navigate each other's bad feelings without making it a competition, but also saying that, like, yeah, sometimes your partner needs more than what you need at the time. And it's about, I forget what he called it, filling up, like, your gratitude bank, maybe?
Emptying the spigot, maybe?
Oh, no, the bank of goodwill. That's what he said, like, building up goodwill between the two of you so that, and so what he said was, when things are good, making sure that we're very vocal about, you know, complimenting our partner and saying good things to our partner. Because then when you are in a negative situation or if you're having a bad day, you have that built up goodwill to kind of offset what you're going through at the time and not put as much blame on your partner for whatever is going on.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting concept because, like, I guess it's a way of saying that, like, if more things are bad than they are good, then maybe you should reevaluate the relationship because the goodwill bank has been completely emptied and keeps trading on deficit every single time something bad comes up.
Exactly. And it's not even necessarily about reevaluating. I would say the reevaluating of the relationship comes into effect if, like, you're not getting goodwill from your partner. But, you know, you also have to look at why are you not getting that goodwill from your partner? Is it simply they don't have goodwill to give or that they don't know how to properly express that to you? Because it's that whole, like, what is your love language kind of thing. And Ryan and I like took that test, and like he and I have different love languages, so we have to.
That's the way it works well, is if you have different love languages.
Right. And so in some ways, though, like so one of my big ones is like physical touch, and physical touch for him is like low on the totem pole. So he has to make a conscious effort to show love to me in a physical touch kind of way, so that our goodwill banks are nice and healthy and full.
It's funny you mention that, because like, so what were your other love, like physical touch, and did you have any other ones that ranked high?
My biggest one was acts of service.
Oh, okay.
Or at least I think it was. And then it went like acts of service, words of affirmation, and then physical touch. Those were the big three for me.
Yeah, mine were acts of service. If you swap that out for acts of service for quality time, that's exactly what mine was. Like
quality time was Ryan's biggest one.
Yeah, which is interesting because like I'll have to ask Lauren if she's taken the love languages test, because it's something that's literally never come up. But like all the other women I've dated have like physical touch is very low on the totem pole of those sort of things. Quality time has generally been a pretty big one for a lot of us. The last relationship I had, acts of service was like a huge one, and gift giving. Gift giving is not something that's usually ranked high with me at all. I actually have talked about it on the podcast before. I actually don't really like getting gifts, guys. It makes me feel weird. So.
So gift giving is one of the ways that I show love, but it didn't show up as high as I expected it would on the love language test. But after therapy, what I realized is that the reason why I give a lot of gifts is because I'm trying to entice people not to abandon me.
Well, that's sometimes like the last relationship I had, I won't go into details specifically not to call anyone out, but perceived lackluster gift giving on my part was a big thing that was like, what am I trying to say? It was an aggression that was like held down very deeply by her and then unleashed later when like there were other things flying around, to the point where like there was a Christmas present I gave her that she did not like and found to, in her words, she said it was the most insulting thing she'd ever gotten in her life. And she didn't tell me this until like a month after Christmas when there was some other argument going on. And I'm like, why didn't you express this like then? I mean, I didn't say that because it was in the middle of another argument and I was scared. But
yeah, I think you did mention that to me before about that issue, about that particular thing.
I'm generally pretty good at giving gifts too. So
because
like you, I want people to stick around with me.
Yeah.
But then I just don't like getting like there are complicated reasons for it, but I always feel guilty whenever people give me presents. So
that makes sense.
If you want to bring me a dinner or something, that's nice. But
food
like
is
actually,
always good.
Well, something that was really super sweet. That shout out to Karen.
We love Karen
K. Money is super tight for me right now, as I'm finally like a month or a year into having the mortgage. I'm getting the squeeze and like have to learn how to refinance my like life essentially. And on Thursday night, I was having the worst day. I was super tired, a very bad body day in general. And even though I didn't really have the money for it, I was just going to get a meal at the Harrisburg Comedy Zone.
We've all been there.
I'm just super hungry. I love their chicken tenders. And Karen just bought me a beer and a dinner because she was using my house for like 2 days. And I told her afterwards, I'm like, this was particularly sweet this week because I was really hard up. I really wanted a nice meal. I really didn't have the money to do it, but was totally going to spend into deficit mode just to do it. So it meant a lot to me. So,
aw, that was nice. We love Karen.
yeah. So those are the kind of gifts I like to get in those kind of situations. But like, if you want to buy me or plants, I'll take plants always.
Those are good ones.
Yeah. But yeah, this conversation, back to my original point.
Ah, shit. What was the original?
No, I don't remember either. I guess
my gosh.
We could always sandwich it by talking about prom scene, because there was like, because we did talk about consent a little bit too, like I hope prom evolved by the time that you got there, but there was significant like pressure for prom to be your first sexual experience. Like
I didn't feel that as much.
Well, did you lose your virginity before you went to prom? Or big question, sorry.
I'm trying to think here now. It was after prom, I want to say. It was like over the summer. But like, I think it was, I lost my virginity in June and then we broke up like in July.
Aw.
So it was like we only had sex the one time and
how How terrible was it?
It was terrible.
Yeah.
The guy thought that condoms were reversible, so I got to watch him struggle with that for a while. And
As a man, that has happened to me. I've never believed condoms were reversible, but it's a real thing, putting them on backwards.
no, but he was like, of course they're reversible. I can put it on this way. I was like,
No.
Daniel, that's not how it works. I was like, and he just insisted. So I was just kind of watching that happen, and that was just unfortunate for everyone. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm at all, but what that reminded me of was there was an episode where Larry David was like finishing too quickly with his wife, and so a friend of him just gave him the Everlast condoms that like have the numbing agents on the inside, but he put it on backwards, and so then his wife's vagina was completely numb for months afterwards. And that's what when you say backwards condom, that was the first thing that came to mind.
And then my senior prom, so the day of prom was when my date was like, hey, I actually like you. We can be a couple. And like we showed up to prom being like, we've been a couple for 30 minutes.
That's potentially sweet, but it may not end that way.
It was sweet at the time. Just that like the way it happened was kind of romantic. Because we were just kind of we were like really good friends, and we were like messing around, and I was like bullying him a little bit because that's what you do when you have a crush. And you know, when you're a kid, like you don't know that things are bad to do, but at the time, you know, like I had this thing where I would be like push or like kind of give him like a what's the thing I'm looking for?
A noogie.
No, like a juvenile kind of like, I'm going to smack you kind of. Yeah, I mean, like not the best way to show affection, but.
No, not a good way to show affection at all.
I was, 16, 17?
You're still figuring it. I think like everybody's kind of figuring things out at that point. And a toxic thing that still exists is the old like, oh, if she makes fun of you or bullies you, that means she likes you kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So I was kind of like going for like kind of like a playful smack kind of thing, and he like grabbed my wrist and like pulled me in and kissed me, and that was the most romantic thing that had happened to me up until that point, and it was very, you know, because I wasn't expected, and it was like, oh, you do like me. So and then we went to prom and it was fun. I don't remember how far into that we had sex because at that point I had some sex, better
Lucky.
sex than beforehand. I think I had sex with 2 other people before that relationship.
Oh, girl! Wow.
Yeah, I was a little bit of a whore, but only because
Whore is
like
the wrong thing to say in this.
I needed validation. It's fine.
You need that validation. Ha ha ha. Gross dad jokes.
Thanks, I hate it.
Me too. I hate that I said that.
How much time do we have left?
We got like 8 minutes.
Okay.
So
what's going on?
Like, I guess just to close out the prom thought too, was like something I found out like years later with the sexual, like, and this is a super Catholic school and everything. A couple of like acquaintances / friends I had when I was in college, like we reconnected when social media became a thing, and I hung out with a couple of them. One of them very particularly told me that she was like straight up raped on prom night by somebody who like went with her and was also like no lie, like, and no surprise, like a very religious person in the community there, like raised in like sort of a Mormon happy household. And then like hearing her tell that to me, like felt, I was happy that like she felt comfortable enough to say that to me because we were like 24 at the time. But it was like, it made me reach out to a couple of other people too, because like I had other friends who not as bad a thing happened like that to them. But they straight up said, it was like, yeah, there was either a lot of pressure to have sexual activity and then a lot of resentment. Like one of them told me that the guy she went to prom with wanted to have sex. She did not at an after party they went to. So he just went and had sex with somebody else, which is also pretty shitty.
I think definitely the best thing you can do if you have a loved one or someone you care about that has had something like that happen to them, and you know, women, men, it happens to everyone. There are just horrible, horrible people out there. Yeah. I mean, the best thing you can do for that person is to listen and not. I'm not gonna say like it's hard because you want to believe every person, and I believe every person, you know, because that's their journey and that's who they are, and that generally people don't lie about those things. I'm not going to say that people never lie about those things, but like, for example, I shared a story with my ex-boyfriend at the time, which was the same one that was doing things to me in my sleep. So maybe we won't read too much into the double standard here. And I had told him about a party that I'd been to the summer after high school where I had been assaulted. And his response was to try and determine how it was my fault. And, you know, and the way he did that was by saying, like, well, did you, you know, lead him on? Did you do this? Did you do that? What did you do to keep him from doing that to you? And
it's funny how the onus of responsibility falls on you to keep somebody from doing that. Like,
yeah. So, so what I'm saying there is, you know, don't think that if somebody is sharing their story with you that they're looking for you to, you know, dig and like try to justify things. Like, they just want you to hear, and like whether or not you think that they're telling the truth, it's just really important to, it's not about you. It's not, and if they are not telling you the truth, it's not that what they're looking for you to do is react and pity them and things like that. But really all an actual victim wants is to be heard and not judged.
Yeah.
And you can do that without believing a person.
Yeah, I mean, I've believed everybody who's ever told me something like, because also like I know the character of the particular men that they were talking about in that case, and I knew that there was, at least with one of them, sort of a screw loose, particularly with that aspect of himself, despite like everything. But yeah, it's it's mostly about just being listened to, being heard, and like that goes for not even just sexual assault, but like any kind of trauma somebody has had. Like, you know, just talk to, like, if somebody feels the need to share something with you that's traumatic, just listen, accept, like, validate.
You don't even have to contribute to that conversation either.
In fact, it's better if you don't, probably. Like,
usually
people just want to be heard in that case, which is a big part of the healing process. So.
Exactly. Being able to tell your story is a huge part of the healing process.
Yeah, I feel like being able to tell your story is really just a huge, like, aside from, like, in a much more general way, is the human, like, experience in general. And, yeah, so if somebody wants to share something special, be it traumatic or happy with you, just listen.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so we have getting away from maybe the most depression vacation
God fucking damn it.
ever. We have like 3 minutes. Do you have any shows coming up soon, Shannon?
Yes, I have the Roast Battle on May 10th. That's going to be a fun show. I will absolutely be at least a little tipsy, so it'll be a lot of fun.
It's how you deal with all the comics making the same joke insults at you all the time.
Well, yeah, and I can't be mean to people sober, so I have to be a little lit to be mean. But it's that special little sweet spot in between, like, being mean and then everything hurting my feelings. So I just have to stay in that little window.
Woot to the hoot. Go, Shannon.
And then I have a show at the Castle Ring Wine Shop on May 20th.
Okay. Where's Castle Ring Wine Shop?
It's in Carlisle.
Okay.
Yeah, right on the kind of the main strip there. And then Ryan and I have callbacks for the Addams Family tomorrow.
Yeah, you mentioned that last week. Congratulations.
Yeah, so we'll see where we end up in the casting, and that show will be in July.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Sideshow is currently playing at the Whitaker Center, too. And I have a couple of friends from different walks of life who are all in that. And I really want to go see that some weekend. But I don't have any shows myself coming up, but I'm still in the middle of the VidJam collaborative project, which I have not started anything on yet. And it's one of the many things that's driving me crazy right now is that, like, I have failed to start a million times. Like, I've also had like the worst 2 weeks, like, because week one of the project, my sister was in the hospital with her like hematosis. So like I was in Wilmington for a while. My parents were there, and it was a whole mess of like that was what all my days off were. Then this week the basement flooded. I was dog sitting, and just like I felt like my body was literally breaking down a lot of days. So hopefully this week will be better, and I can put something down on paper and shoot a movie to contribute to the project that I already committed to.
Exactly. Yeah, it's going to be a new month, so everybody can leave April behind and start fresh.
Yeah, you can get your Hearthstone rewards, get your ranking reset, and everything should be
And there's other fun things coming up this month. Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom comes out May 12th. You guys have fun playing that because I'm going to have to wait a month and a half. So have a good time.
You know what? Maybe I'll wait a month and a half then too.
In solidarity.
Not necessarily solidarity, but I just don't like everything I have coming up. There's so much stuff.
Yeah.
Sam finally announced when the actual summer vid jam, 48
cool.
hours coming up. And that's going to be in about exactly 1 month. So I have to get my body and my shit together so I'm not breaking down. But there's going to be a lot of fun stuff too. The open screen is returning too for vid jam.
Oh, cool.
Which I need to finish the last of my 80s girls shorts that
Nice.
Ashley Madavi and I did 95% of in January, and then I never finished. I'm noticing a trend here, Hal. And I was also thinking, we shot a short with, you and I shot a short with Gary and Pat George and Damien a year ago that I never even touched.
Yeah.
So I want to finish that for this next open screen too. For me, the open screens are kind of just the onus to hey, do you have projects that you haven't finished yet for years? Which for Hal, that's always a yes, because Hal can't manage his brain well enough to do projects over time. So
yeah.
That's why the 48 hours are very attractive, because it forces me to just do stuff.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, that's all I have coming up, so.
Sounds good. Sounds we have some exciting things going on.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for listening to Depression Vacation. We hope something was helpful in what we said and not harmful. But I've been Hal.
I've been Shannon.
And this has been Depression Vacation.